me that I understand the views of the guidelines besides curriculum level of students, but I'd like for you to take me through the process. When you say you bring somebody in as a freshman, when you come in and say that we're over the grade level, what's the process that for you to provide help for a student to increase their grade level? Can you explain to me on a day-to-day basis if you would like to hear more about that? Because I got some things I'm sure I did not prefer.
Well, basically, depending on what the college grade score is, really plain and simple. They give you the strategies that you need to use for that. And so the teachers have access to that. And so we have multiple forms of practice. We have teachers who have gave up their planning period to take this to give more individual instruction. Because honestly, the way high school is set up, you haven't got time just to teach reading, all this other stuff. We have all these standards in Algebra 2, EOC, biology. You have all these individual subject matters. So teaching someone to read when they're 15, 16, 17 years old, if you look at all the research, you know, Ms. Dowdy has lived with it, she's in special ed, that's going to be a miracle to get them up to grade level. But there's things we can do to advance them a little bit farther. You know, so basically we take the strategies that have already been established by ACT, and we'll use those strategies and assess those kids differently. You know, we're not going to give everybody the same activity or enrichment. So when it comes to enrichment time, these kids might be doing one thing, this group over here. I'm not going to give a kid who's got a 35 ACT the same activity that I'll give a kid who's got a 10. And so we have to individualize. It's like giving everybody their own IEP when it comes to improving their...
And I can understand why you can't take away from the teachers regular. They still all kinds of students people on the radar, but that is the strategy. Or
we've got a lot. This year we have daytime ESS and science, math. We have 2 or 3 people who work with science all year long. I mean math all year long. We've got.
I'm about to get somebody reading a little better.
When we had Read 180 here, about how many years ago? 5, 6 years ago, just Slosher, we dedicated one whole class period to individuals who basically were seniors who needed electives because you ain't got much leeway anywhere else. And it improved. We have one kid who made it to 9th grade. Very successful. It was reading on a 4th and 5th grade level or something like that. You know? But that is an intense, everyday program. So in order for us to move a kid in reading level, it will have to be every day, every period, just about intense reading. We can't do that. The state ties their hands about how many credits they have to get. You know, you got to have so many credits to be a sophomore. You know, you have to take this many English, this many math. You know, so do I think we should be able to have a reading class in the county? Yeah, but the state ties your hand unless you get the right state code to count as an English. So.
Well, and I don't want there to be a misunderstanding. Every child has to have an English class, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. And within those literature classes and writing composition classes, those skills are still being taught. I think the question that both board members are trying to get to is, within those classes, are we individually identifying those students who need more specific help? And I think that's a question we would have to really address with those literature teachers as a part of that conversation. But I know exactly what you're asking. I'm just not sure we're getting the right answer. Why you can sit here
and I may not be asking right away.
No, I think you are. I know what you're asking. And then go back to the piece about knowing where students are specifically on the reading level as they move from 9th grade to 10th grade, 10th grade to 11th grade, and they made progress with advancing the read skill beyond the 1 year advancement that you would expect. And I think that's what you're talking about. The behind level, obviously, to get caught up, they're going to have to advance more than 1 grade level in a year's time. And this move to the Lexile scores for reading will give us a better method of actually tracking that than what we currently have right now. The Read 180 program uses Lexile scores already, so our lowest level students are participating in that now to the 4th, 5th grade, those schools. We actually have those schools in town when we go to scholastic reading inventory, other students to try to pull it. That's not correct.
I think I'm interrupting, but I think the more kids that we could get reading on grade level before they get to Mr. Hall, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's correct. That's a true statement.
Well, and I think part of my question is that I'm referencing to a point in another era when somebody was a slow reader, which I was in the first grade, you know, one of my fellow students took me to the back room and we read Jerry and Alice over and over and over again and tried to kind up. But so what I'm hearing from here is that it doesn't work that way now, where you sit down and teach somebody how to read another level, just specifically about reading.
Well, I think I was going to ask the question, what would it take to get it back, reading?
To read 180, $40,000 is what Mr. Ken has said. I mean, I sent a teacher down to Lebanon Middle School just this past, a couple months ago when all the elementary schools were being trained. I have a teacher who wants to get their master's in being a reading specialist. You know, and he's willing, and we're willing to create that class. However, for us to be able to create that class, we've got to have a license, and like you said, it's going to be $40,000. I mean, I've got a stable of kids, and we would like to start with freshmen, but I don't have $40,000 to be able to start the
How much
program.
money do you have in your activity fund?
My activity fund right now, I've got about $10,000. That's the money that I control.
How much do you have in your athletic fund?
I don't know, that's money that goes towards athletic, about $10,000 it goes.
Well, all the sports combined,
Yeah, more than that.
actual athletic department, right? Well,
You see the point that I'm making? I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just trying to make a point here. The reading is so high on the list on what we should be doing as a school district that we're talking about not being able to do what needs to be done because we don't have the funds. But we've got money to fund everything else that we want to do. That's all I have to say right now.
Well, if you talk to my science teachers, they'd rather be focusing on science here because.
I wouldn't say, I didn't say
They keep on, they keep on.
I wouldn't
buying
insinuate things,
Yeah.
but I want your science teachers to stop to teach reading. That's
Right.
not what I was implying.
And that's what a lot of reading specialists say, that that's how it has to, in the high school level, that we have to stop and do reading in those subject matters. But it's really hard to do when we have all these science standards we have to cover, then you got to take a test on it at the end to see. I mean, I agree with the fact that we can be teaching reading within the subject matters, but then you're robbing Peter to pay Paul within that concept, you know? And that's not really going to, that's just a Band-Aid fix for the kids who are really below grade level that need the help more than anybody else. Any other questions for me? Sorry, other commissioners, I didn't mean to get up there. I had a 6-minute time to get all that. Yeah, let's stick to it. Yeah.
That's all.
The first few slides I want to flip through for you just to show you some of the great things that are going on at Glasscock. It seems like that this might be something that maybe you haven't heard about yet. So I threw in a few pictures. Our STLP Team 1 State, Academic Team 1 District Governor's Cup. We had an artist in residence here the last 2 days, which I know she was at Lebanon Elementary School, and then she came to Glasscock, but we had a lot of fun. We celebrated Earth Day yesterday. Miss Brooke and Miss Lulu's class did some fun stuff. And if you missed our showcase, you missed a great time and a lot of good 60s music. So our theme this year was peace, love, and proficiency. We just last week got named a fit-friendly work site, and we got this gold seal of approval. And that's because we have multiple walking clubs through our Family Resource Center. We have Girls on the Run. We have different things that our staff participated in. We have different cooperative extension and other organizations that come in and do healthy eating with our kids. So we did recently get that just last week. So we have lots of good news to share with you. Last month, Dr. Seuss's birthday, lots of guest readers, some celebrities in this room, of course. And we have book clubs with the Marion County Public Library for grades 3, 4, and 5. That is something we did new this year. That has been phenomenal. The kids have had a blast with this. And our 5th grade newspaper team. We had a group of kids that did this a few years ago, but then we hadn't had it for a couple of years, and we had a group step up and say, hey, we want to do a 5th grade newspaper. And I tell you what, these kids are wonderful. Stevie, maybe you're reading it. They're really good. School improvement plan update. I'll go through this really quickly. Things that we have already implemented: literacy training for all staff, assessment and rigor training for certified staff. We've been doing different reading strategies, sharing kinds of things through staff meeting at PLCs and through some newsletter things. And standards-based grading and math, which all of the elementary schools did this year. We had a parent night for grades 3, 4, and 5. We had lesson plan upgrades. We all adopted a lesson plan template that we're using school-wide now, and it is based around some of the recommendations from KASC that incorporate teacher-led instruction, student-guided instruction, and of course the formative assessment practices and those kinds of things. And so that, that's something that you'll see a little more consistency moving from classroom to classroom. And we've always had guided literacy groups in the primary. We went to more of a centers approach a few years ago. We've decided to go back to the level literacy groups, and we have those all the way up to grade 5 this year. So that is something that we did a little bit different. Now we're going back to the way we did it in primary, and we added 4th and 5th grade level reading groups. Other things that we've implemented: more focus on those longer reading passages and those time tests. We felt very strongly that those are two things that our kids were not prepared for on the test last year. The other elementary principals, I'm sure, would tell you the same. When you practice reading passages in elementary school, you're usually looking at maybe a 2-page reading passage, then you answer multiple choice and open response questions about that passage you just read. Then we got the K-Prep test last year. Some of those reading passages were 4 and 5 pages long. Then you got the multiple choice questions and the constructive response questions. And by the time the kids got to the questions, some of them were worn out. So they weren't used to having those longer passages. And the previous test, the CATS test, was an untimed test. So they had an unlimited amount of time. Whereas the K-Prep test, they started having a very limited amount of time. And we feel strongly that our kids were not ready for that change. We're doing reading logs school-wide. Vocabulary and comprehension have been a huge focus. That's something else we've been working with KASC.
Ms. Devine,
Yes, sir.
reading logs, explain that just a little bit.
We want to make sure that our kids are reading every single night, Monday through Thursday. That's part of going along with our guided literacy groups as well. So to make sure that that is happening, there's a reading log that goes home, or the parents have to sign off in their planner, because some of our grade levels use planners. The parents sign off, that tells us that that reading is occurring, or not occurring, as the case may be, whichever. And that gives us, reason to follow up with that parent. This is what we need to be doing. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We did an effectiveness survey. We have a lot of programs and things going on in our building. A lot of things that we have spent money on that we wanted to see whether the teachers considered those things effective or not effective. And if anyone would like to receive those results, it was a very lengthy survey, but I would be happy to email that to you if you'd like to see it. Book study for grades 4 and 5 has been completed. That was doing some of the Harry Wong work on classroom expectations. Grades 4 and 5 are going to have common expectations in every classroom for those 2 grade levels beginning next year. That means the rules will be exactly the same from this class to this class to this class, because our kids do move around. Right now, one teacher might Let you get up at any time and go get a Kleenex or sharpen your pencil, whereas in another classroom, maybe you have to raise your hand. Because we've been operating on a system called CHAMPS, where the teachers teach the expectations the first 2 weeks of the school year, and they teach them and teach them and teach them, but every classroom did not have to have exactly the same expectations. So we decided that that's something that we would rather be more consistent. So the teachers did a book study on that, and we're going to go for more consistent classroom expectations for next year. More math application problems. We found on the K-Prep test that it was all about math application. They weren't just asking you, what was, 444 plus 526. The kids can do those kinds of problems. No, it was what number plus 546 equals 994. They had to figure out that missing number. And there were more word problems on the K-Prep test than just those computation problems that we were seeing previously. So our math teachers were doing more computation than they were word problems. Thus, we didn't do as well on K-Prep as we wanted to in math. We've tried to refocus that, do a lot more application and word problems, and a little less of the simply computation. So we're hoping that that's going to help us out. The math and focus texts have a whole lot more application. So now that the teachers are following the math and focus, there are a lot more application problems in that series. Upgraded technology. Our school council has spent a lot of money upgrading computers. This year, we just got 9 more in today where we're upgrading, and just trying to make sure that the students have access to everything that they need in the most quick and effective way possible. So we've upgraded a lot of technology this year. Lexile levels. With the change of standards, we've gone from this kind of reading level over to Lexile reading levels. Well, all of our literacy books, all of our library books were on the old level. So we've been having some wonderful parent volunteers coming in and some of our staff members redoing all of those books to write the Lexile levels into the books. And then Mrs. Akers and the teachers are keeping the students where they're checking out and reading books that are in their Lexile range. And that's very difficult to do when you're talking about 400 kids and everybody has a different Lexile range. So it's all about the kids knowing what their Lexile number is, knowing what their range is, and then trying to catch them when they're trying to sneak in that book that's a couple hundred points too low. So, we're trying to stay on top of that much better as far as what levels of books the kids are reading. We're also doing a huge job of tracking student Lexile levels. Every 4 weeks, the teachers send their updated reading numbers to me, whether that's a running record, the SRI scores, whatever. We do test our use the SRI test every month, whereas not everybody uses it that much, but we are trying to stay on top of exactly how many kids are reading the low grade level, which I have those numbers. I can give you exact numbers tomorrow. I have all of the numbers except one grade level that I can give you, so I'll get to that in just a minute. Still to be implemented, we still are going to do, in our school improvement plan, a review of the understanding poverty concepts. We feel like that was something we did several years ago that helped us really understand more about our community and some of the kids that we are serving, and we felt like to revisit that, and that's a wonderful book if you have not read about it, or read it, about kids that are coming out of a poverty demographic and how their whole view of relationships and school and just everything is a little bit different than students who come from a non-poverty background. So if you haven't read that, that's a great book, and we are going to do another review of that book study. Additional training related to reading and math standards. We have some PD planned for June with the other elementary schools. We're also looking at standards-based reading for next year. That's with all the elementaries. We're looking for new reading materials based on the new standards. As I said, all the new reading standards changed. All the Lexile requirements for students at every grade level has changed. And we still have the same reading text that we've had for, 7 or 8 years? Okay, which is on the old standards, not the new. So we've had a district team that's been working on identifying new reading materials and making recommendations on how we need to update that for all elementary schools. And once again, that's going to be consistent. We're all working together on that. Working on student motivation. That is a huge problem in our school, is keeping the students motivated to want to do well. We have a lot of students that are giving up a little too easily, and to be honest with you, we're doing everything we can right now to motivate them to get through the next 22 days. So it's just awfully easy for them to give up because we are pushing them very hard right now. Summer Jumpstart program, that is in the planning stages right now. We're doing Summer Jumpstart in addition to the 4th and 5th grade Read 180 reading program. So we will have different things for different grade levels going on at Glasscock this summer. And we are planning a book study for teachers in grades K through 3, similar to what grades 4 and 5 have already done. Oh, back. Test scores. Where are we right now with ThinkLink? Now these are, what I'm comparing are, for grades 1 and 2, I'm giving you the most recent scores, the March scores, the brand new ones. In the slides for grades 3, 4, and 5, I'm showing you where the kids were before Christmas compared to where they are in March. So in March, for grade 1, for ThinkLink, we have 80.8% proficient and distinguished in reading, 87.7% proficient and distinguished in math. We have about 5% of our first graders reading below grade level right now. Grade 2 ThinkLink, reading, 75.8% proficient and distinguished, math, 80.7% proficient and distinguished. We have between 8 and 10% of our second graders that are reading below level. The ThinkLink shows it a little bit lower. Our SRI scores show it a little bit higher. So for second grade, the ThinkLink and the SRI are not jiving as well as they do for some of the other grade levels. So, you know, the ThinkLink shows more kids reading on grade level than the SRI test does, and we did just give both in March. For grade 3, we went from 26.5% proficient and distinguished before Christmas to 60.3% proficient and distinguished after Christmas, math 38.8 to 51.6. The reason I'm showing you this way is I want you to see how hard the teachers and the staff at Glasscock have been pushing the kids and really focusing on the curriculum. These are some huge jumps, and I'm very, very proud of the staff. Grade 4 ThinkLink, reading 31.7% up to 40.4, math 15.9% up to 43.8. Oh, I should say, in grade 3, we're running 15 to 20% reading below grade level. In grade 4, we're running 30 to 35% reading below grade level right now. Grade 4 is our highest percentage of reading below grade level right now in the
Y'all
building.
not keeping up with all this, you are giving me an average.
I have averages by grade level, I don't have an average for the whole school. When I break down the data, I do it by grade level.
But one thing that I was looking at, if the numbers are that great in the first and second, what happens in the third and fourth? That the reading just drops off.
I can tell you exactly what happened. The standards are different for the first and second grade ThinkLink. It is an early primary test, and it goes by the same standards that it went by in previous years. The standards for the ThinkLink test for the third, fourth, and fifth grade now follow the new Common Core standards. And the standards actually changed between August and Christmas of last year. And we, who work in the system, we were told you cannot compare your early fall scores to your Christmas scores because we changed your standards in between. So so the standards went from the old scale to the new scale. So you've got first and second grade that are still on the old scale that honestly, it's a little bit easier to get proficient and distinguished on the old scale. It was quite a bit easier actually. Whereas with the new standards for grades 3, 4, and 5, which are also what the K-Prep test is going to measure, is the new standards, it's much more difficult to get proficient and distinguished on the new standards with grades 3, 4, and 5. So it's going from the old to the new. And I think the other principals will probably tell you the same thing. Science and social studies, these scores have been very consistent because their standards have not changed. They have remained the same. So all of our science proficient and distinguished have been within 3 points of where they are now. So I just gave you the number. 59.7% proficient and distinguished for science with 10% novice. Social studies, 49% proficient and distinguished with 15% novice. Grade 5 ThinkLink, reading went from 20.7 proficient and distinguished to 50.9%. Math 20.7 up to 39.7% proficient and distinguished. In 5th grade, we have between probably 28 to 30% of reading below grade level. It's 14 kids. So it's 14 kids in 5th grade as of last night. Any questions about that part so far? Ms. Akers is going to give you a quick review of our primary program. Questions about the numbers, the figures? You can still ask questions when she's done. Ms. Akers?
All right, so Glasscock Elementary School was selected to complete a primary program review for this year. A team of teachers collaborated and discussed the document in PLC meetings. The document is broken down in 4 different categories: curriculum and instruction, formative and summative assessment, professional development, and administrative leadership support and monitoring. The team scored our primary program on 4 different levels: limited, needs improvement, proficient, or distinguished. First of all, here are some of the strengths that we found. The first one was collaboration among teachers on their team or grade levels. Students have access to and use a variety of equipment and materials. Our RTI decision-making protocol has been established and is used to make decisions. Aligned curriculum. Teachers embed multiple and developmentally appropriate assessments to monitor progress and grade instruction. Teachers participate in job-embedded professional development, and the K-3 teachers regularly collaborate with stakeholders. Some things that we've done: mock election, our artist in residence, government day, our health department classes, extension office, and there's many, many more. Areas for growth. Learning targets are connected to intended standards. The instructional strategies vary throughout the school. Teachers provide primarily evaluative feedback and communication with parents about the K-3 program. And how can we take these areas of growth to make them a strength? Some ideas that we had are improving communication with learning targets. We post them in the classroom and outside the classroom. They are addressed to the students at the beginning and at the end of the lesson, and they're written in child-friendly language. KASC has been to our school multiple times. They've given us suggestions, tips, and we're going by them. With the instructional strategies varying throughout the school, we have common lesson planning templates, PLCs, acknowledgement of student-led, teacher-led instructional strategies. As far as teachers providing feedback to the students, again, KSC has been in our building. They've given us suggestions, tips, and then collaborating with teachers. As far as communication with parents about the K-3 program, we are planning to update our policy and our handbook. All grade levels held parent nights explaining the program in the standards-based grading model. Any questions?
That's all of our program. We kind of shared what we were supposed to present at the last board meeting with what we had tonight. So if you have any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before we go on, can we take like 5 minutes, you all, 5, 10 minutes?